All right, so we're going to get into chapter three here. So, after chapter one, where we kind of break down the regions of the world, and then chapter two, where we get into political and economic systems of the world, now we're really digging in about what the meat and potatoes of this class are. And today we're going to discuss ethics and social responsibility. And so, when we talk about ethics, um, it's such an interesting concept to think about when we think about ethics across different cultures because of how ethics change and the way that we think about doing right and wrong changes from one culture to the other. We kind of know what morals and ethics are for us in the United States, but when we start to think about other countries, things get really different really fast. So that's kind of what we're going to get into. So first, let's start with the big picture. What's the difference between these two? What's the difference between ethics and morals? So here's how I want you guys to think about this. I want you to think about morals as they're your own standards. So each individual one of you have your own standards and beliefs about what you think is right and wrong for you to do. So you each have your own moral code in this class. And what we'd find is that people, for the most part, have kind of similar morals in this class, but there are some differences among individuals. Now, ethics is one way to think about ethics is the overlap that everyone in the class tends to have because maybe almost all of us are American or grew up in certain regions, and therefore we share the same ethics, which is a social system. So ethics is the larger picture, the nation or the country level system in which morals are applied. So in this class, we're more interested in ethics than we are morality because morality is more about an individual component. And most of the right and wrong issues that we're going to discuss over the next couple days in class are going to be from an ethical component about what's right and what's wrong in kind of a legal sense. But to give you an example of how ethics really play a role, let's back out and let's think about something that's kind of fun or kind of interesting. Let's look at this picture here. This is the very famous Pamplona running of the bulls. This is in Spain, and what you see here, men only are running in this entertainment slash activity that's very famous in Pamplona, Spain. You see it's only men. Women aren't allowed to do this. And basically, all of these crazy people here, you can see a few of them down in the background right here getting trampled. Basically what they do is they drink all night, and early in the morning they're still up, and they get a head start on the bulls, and then all these bulls are released, and they have kind of a pathway that the bulls run in. And the reason I like to bring this up is because I like to ask people, would you do this, something you participate in? And a lot of people say, I might not want to be down here, but I'd at least like to check it out. I'd like to be back up behind this here and watch it. And these bulls look like, they look cool, they look interesting, and they're running and they stomp people, and people rarely die here. But what happens to the bulls? That's what I always ask people. And are these bulls, once they get into the ring, where are they running to? Well, they're running into a ring, and basically they will be used throughout the matador season, the bullfighting season in Spain, and they'll face the matador. And in class, I'm going to talk a little bit about what actually happens here. But basically, I've had the good fortune to be able to take students to Spain the past couple years to teach this course. And we don't visit a bullfight. And they're like, Professor Whitman, why don't we go to a bullfight? And I said, well, you can go on your own. There's plenty of time on your own if you want to go. And usually half the class will go or 2/3 of the class will go. And when they get back, their jaws drop and they can't believe the kind of violence against the bull that they just witnessed. The bull dies a violent, gory death. And so the question that we kind of ask is, why do the Spanish do this? Why do they mutilate and torture a bull for entertainment? A really big sentient being is something that we would never allow in this country. And you kind of think about that, and it's what the bull means to Spanish people. The history of bullfighting goes back to the medieval ages, and the bull represents, it's sort of a stage show. It's not really a sport. But the bull can win, and the bull does win sometimes when it kills a matador, then it's allowed to go free. But for the most part, 99 times out of 100, the bull dies a violent death in front of a whole bunch of people who applaud and watch and want more violence. And so the bull kind of represents the animal instincts of man, and the matador represents the ideal of man. And it's kind of, a ballet in some ways. It's kind of a kabuki theater. It's very ritualistic. But the point is that even among Spanish people, there's a huge protest, especially over where Barcelona is in Catalonia region. They've actually outlawed bullfighting. But it appears to be unethical to many, many people across the world, but not to Spanish people. And so we think about something like that, entertainment like that, and then we back out and think about employment and business, and we have the exact same kind of issues. What one country sees as right, another country sees as wrong, and it brings up many, many dilemmas involving how long people work, how hard they work, what age they can start to work at, how they're supervised, what kinds of jobs are lost, and what kind of jobs are gained by shipping them over to different countries where people have different working conditions that we would consider abhorrent and perhaps illegal and unethical. So there's this huge issue about ethics that we need to get into when we discuss the workplace. So tied up into this is an issue of corruption. And the reason that I want to highlight corruption here is because what it means to be corrupt in one country versus the other is very, very different. So if you consider Russia or China, you basically have to be corrupt in order to be in government and to do business, because money is constantly trading hands. Favors are constantly being traded, and you just can't do business unless you're quote unquote corrupt. The Russians and the Chinese, they don't see themselves as corrupt by giving bribes, giving kickbacks, trading favors, whereas in this country we see it as illegal, and you go to jail for the exact same behavior that's seen as just normal. That's how you do business in other countries. So ethics and what the role of a corporation and what the role of government is in maintaining a civil society is a question that can move back and forth. And so if we consider the least and most corrupt countries from an ethical point of view, and this was a study that was done about 10 years ago, and what we see is that we can measure this in a number of different ways by the number of leaders that are arrested, how easy it is to do business without bribing people, all kinds of indexes, transparency among government and business, all this sort of thing. You can make kind of an index from this. And what you see is your Scandinavian countries always come out on top of these, of the least corrupt countries. And as you move down, you start to see more towards Asia, more towards a different part of the world than this other part of the world. The United States is 20 out of 156. So for a big country, the United States is one of the least corrupt countries, because most big countries tend to be more corrupt. Just the nature of the beast when you get really, really big. But down here we start to see the kinds of countries that are corrupt. And when we look at these countries closer, we see that there's a reason that they're at the bottom of the list, because they view what their behaviors as being ethical. They view their behaviors as not being corrupt. And so we start to think about this and what it means for jobs and what it means for work, and we see that there's really no universally adopted standards of what it means to be ethical in the workplace. There's certain things that we can kind of think of, like you can't kill somebody in the workplace. Almost all countries agree with that. You should pay people for their services, so they can't be slaves in the workplace. Well, most countries, all countries kind of agree with that. But once we start getting down to how can you express your opinion, or how much rights do you have in your workplace, or how much are you protected from being discriminated against in the workplace? There's just no standards at all across countries, and it's completely subjective and culturally derived with what's right and what's wrong. We'll talk about women's rights in class too, but even just the way that women in other countries see themselves and are okay with being treated differently is something that is very difficult for people in the United States to imagine. That women would be okay with being seen as a second-class citizen, but there's many countries where women are okay with it and accept their different role in society, where in the United States it's just very difficult for us to imagine how this could happen and how women would see themselves in such a light. Now, corporate social responsibility has to do with an ethical component that corporations tend to have. Okay, so it's related to ethics, but it's about how corporations can benefit society. And the definition of corporate social responsibility is straight up about how actions that benefit society beyond what corporations are required to do by law. So paying your taxes, that's not corporate social responsibility. You have to. But when we talk about other things, when we talk about acts like donating money or starting foundations or training leaders off-site, those kinds of things are seen as corporate social responsibility because it's voluntary action that corporations take. And it's basically trying to improve the way that a corporation does either sells their products or their services and how they're viewed, how they impact the environment, how they're seen as being a workplace and the safety of the workplace. There's some branding that goes on in there. And if you, I like to show this example about Walmart. If you look at Walmart, it's a really interesting a study here. Walmart here, I'm going to scroll the Walmart Foundation here. You look at how much money they gave away in 2016. They're still calculating up. That's as far as they've got data for. But Walmart in 2016 gave away over $1.4 billion. And you kind of have to ask, why did they do that? And one of the reasons that you have to answer is because Walmart wants to be around. Walmart wants to be around in 100 years. They want to still be making profit in 100 years. And what Walmart kind of realizes is that young people are starting to view them as sort of evil or sort of bad. And Walmart wants to say, hey, we are doing our best to improve this world that we live in to make it more sustainable. But when we think about sustainability, we tend to think about it from a kind of a environmental standpoint. But sustainability has to do with how a corporation meets humanity's needs without harming future generations. So sustainability, from Walmart's perspective, is about branding themselves that they're not an evil corporation. And that they're trying to do good. They're trying to help people. And I like to show that, these old slogans that Walmart used to have. If we look at this first logo here, we see Walmart's old slogan. Walmart, I love this slogan. It's so great. It's always low prices. And just in case you didn't know, always. So low prices are what Walmart's all about. But what does low prices mean? It means you'll find things that are cheap there. But you also, what does that mean? That means things are cheap. And it's not a place you want to go to shop for your clothing. It's not a place you want to go to shop for important things in your life. And young people kind of don't feel good when they go into Walmart. And so Walmart's trying to change that. And they're trying to change that by donating money. They're trying to change that too about saying what their goal and mission is, how their ethical focus with their company. It's not just low prices. So they change that. And what you'll see is now Walmart's about saving money and living better. It's more family oriented. It's not just about being cheap. And so this is the kind of changes that Walmarts have done that are they have, on one hand they have corporate social responsibility. On the other hand, they're trying to change to be more sustainable and have people have better views of their company.